Hello, everybody. So, welcome to our virtual Folk Music Ontario session, partnered with Unison. Thanks so much, Joel, for the introduction, and for Folk Music Ontario and Elka and Tara and the whole team for putting this together. I think it's a really, really important discussion to have, especially right now. So today, with our amazing panelists, we're going to discuss an all-around wellness approach for us all to take notes from, hopefully. We're going to discuss the barriers that we must face as music makers and professionals in regard to maintaining our health and wellness, and chat about resources that are available to you to check out after the session is done. So this hour and a bit is really a good time for individuals, but also organizations to benefit from. So definitely get your pens and paper ready if you have some with you. Let's get right into it. This session is definitely a safe place for open dialogue to happen. So to my panelists, I may be directing questions at each of you specifically, but everyone's welcome to expand on each question if they would like to. Definitely not going to limit a focal point to one person. I believe you all have amazing perspectives to share. So let's just get the conversation rolling. My name is Sarah Hagerman. I am the Industry and Events Manager for the nonprofit organization Unison Benevolent Fund. And I'm going to go over what Unison is quickly. So if you don't know what Unison is, get ready. You're going to want to write this one down for sure. So Unison is an assistance program. It's created and administered for the music community, by the music community, and it's designed to provide discreet relief to music industry professionals in times of crisis and hardship. So there are two distinct services, support available through our fund, which is our financial assistance, yes, money, and counseling and health solutions. Please learn about our services and how they can help you at unisonfund.ca. And music makers and professionals can access our financial assistance program, like I mentioned, that's available to you through a simple application, and for free. You can even get mental health counseling and many other resources to help you get on your feet. Trust me, there's so much you can do by going to the Unison website. There's so many self-help tools there too. So after the session's done, make sure you check it out. All services are free, like I mentioned, and 100% confidential. I'm happy to answer any questions people have about Unison. You can find my contact on the website. If you want to reach out with questions privately, I'm totally open to answering people as well. So on to some real talk, guys. I'm going to introduce our incredible panelists that we're so lucky to have. So here we have Denise Waligora from the Mental Health Commission of Canada, Diana Romero of Romero Psychotherapy, and on the board of the organization Over the Bridge, which is another super key organization you guys are going to want to jot down. Catherine Hummel of Royalty Records and Hummel Entertainment, and our amazing artist that we have here, Carmen L. So let me just quickly introduce everyone and read a little bit on them before we get started so you know who's talking at you. So Denise Waligora has a Bachelor of Science degree and over 20 years of working in the mental health field. Prior to joining the Mental Health Commission in 2011, Denise's professional experiences include psychiatric nursing, residential program director, IBI therapist, crisis worker and case manager in a justice program. Denise has been facilitating mental health first aid since 2008. And that's just a little snippet on Denise. So if you guys want to find Denise, go on the Folk Music Ontario website and you can learn more about Denise underneath her bio there. And you can do that with all the panelists too. That were all listed on the Folk Music Ontario website. So make sure you check that out too. And on to Diana Romero is a registered psychotherapist in the province of Ontario. She owns Romero Psychotherapy and Renova, which provides inpatient services for individuals suffering with addictions and mental health. She has been in private practice for 11 years, helping individuals with depression, anxiety, PTSD, and addictions. And she sits on the board of Over the Bridge as their mental health expert for musicians. So thank you, Diana, so much for being here and taking the time. And Catherine Hummel has been behind the scenes of prestigious artist-related companies such as CMW, Indie Week, Factor, and in 2005 launched her own artist management and marketing company, Hummel Entertainment. Over a decade later, in 2015, she partnered with Royalty Records and to date oversees the label's day-to-day. Catherine has also recently joined forces with Unison as a health and wellness consultant. So if you guys also have questions about Unison you'd like to direct at Catherine, totally do so. So Carmen, last but not least, Carmen L is a queer musician and songwriter from Toronto. She's begun writing music, playing shows, and recording albums in her teens, and for the past decade has played in several bands, most notably Diana, Army Girls, and Ostra. Carmen has opened for Tegan and Sarah, Iron and Wine, just to name a couple, performed at South by Southwest, Iceland Airways, The Great Escape in the UK. In 2014, Diana's debut full-length Perpetual Surrender was longlisted for the Polaris Music Prize. In addition to working as a musician, Carmen has written and spoken about her experiences living with OCD, anxiety, depression, and trauma. Currently, she is working to open a studio space in Toronto to help emerging and marginalized artists gain access to affordable spaces to create. So thanks so much, Carmen, for joining. So many great things about these panelists that we have, guys. So let's get into the questions. So let's first discuss the barriers that we face as people in the music industry in regard to maintaining our health and wellness during these times. And before we can even get into that, we need to establish kind of what we mean by health and wellness in the first place. And just briefly, so Diana, I'm gonna throw this one at you first, if you don't mind. So both your mental and physical health need to be accounted for. What is your perspective about what optimal health means for an individual? For example, are your mental and physical health truly connected? What should people be considering about health and wellness? What does that mean to you, basically? Oh, you got to unmute yourself there, Diana. There we go.
Okay, there. So when you look at mental health, yes, 100% it is connected to the physical as well, because when we want to treat an individual, we want to look at it from a holistic level, which is the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, and the physical. Because you are one person and you are one body, to try to say, oh, I'm going to separate this from that, it's like to trying to tell you, I'm going to separate your arms from your body, and your arm will still work once I cut it off the body. We know it doesn't work that way, right? So when we look at an individual, we look at them from the overall. And that's why things like conversion disorder, for example, exist, where an individual is dealing with some sort of psychiatric issue, and for some reason we haven't been able to correct it, or we don't know where it's coming from, and somehow it'll translate itself into the physical realm, and then now they're having all these symptoms and all these disorders that every single time, and more than likely, Denise probably remembers seeing patients like that. You'll run medical test after medical test after medical test, and everything will come back clean and clear, unremarked, and still the individual is suffering from these disorders. So 100% it is truly connected. And that's why when I worked with the indigenous, and I still do, one of the things that they really teach you on, and they harp real hard on, is that we are overall, it's like the medicine wheel. There's those 4 components to you, and you cannot separate those 4 quadrants. And if you try, you won't end up helping anybody. So when I see someone having some sort of physical element that they cannot understand, I quickly go into the emotional or the psychological, and right there you see that it's going hand in hand, because something is not being cured up here, then it's affecting down here.
Amazing. Does anybody else want to expand on what health and wellness means to them? I know, Denise, you're nodding your head a lot, so
Yes.
what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, one of the things is, like, if we take a look at the definition of health, a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So as we know, they're connected. So if we have an individual, so let's just take musicians. Like, one of the things about being a musician is the social aspect of it, right? You have all the social circles. When we take that social piece away, we know our mental health can be affected by that. And mental health affected, somebody could then, if they already live with a physical illness, that could make that physical illness even worse. So we really do, and I like the way that Diana said that, is that it is all connected. And when we look at mental health, often if you bring up the term mental health, people will say, oh, no, I don't have mental health. We all have mental health. We don't all live with mental health problems. So we need to be able to have the same conversation about physical health and mental health and social health, and bring all those aspects in, and it's all connected. And that holistic approach, and certainly indigenous, I've been very fortunate to have worked with many indigenous populations, Inuit, First Nations, Métis, throughout my career, and all the learnings that we take from that, the teachings that we take from that, right? But we have to look at the whole person. We know that it's all connected, and mental health is just as important as physical health. And we need to be able to have these conversations. We also know that wellness looks different for everybody as well too, and that's one really important thing, is that what wellness means for me isn't the same as wellness for you, Sarah. What helps my mental well-being isn't necessarily what's going to help your mental well-being. And so that's why also when we're supporting each other, we need to look at one person at a time when we're offering that support to an individual. And I'll stop there because I could carry on and I don't want to. I'm not the only one on the panel.
Yeah, no, amazing. I think it's really important. And again, going back to what you said, how everything's different for everybody. And
Yep.
that's really key and that's why sessions like this are great, but it's important for people to hopefully take nuggets, right, from things like this, and not necessarily, you don't have to listen to everything we say, but you should definitely take nuggets. So Carmen, I'm going to shoot a question at you now. So from an artist perspective, what have been your main challenges that you face when trying to keep up with your health and wellness during the pandemic specifically? I know there's, the conversation of health and wellness has been being brought into the light more and more now over the past few years for sure. But during the pandemic specifically, what have been the main kind of challenges you're facing as an artist, if you don't mind expanding on that?
That's a good question. I can speak a little bit from a personal perspective, and also I want to share like a little bit about what I'm gleaning from my peers as well.
Yes, please.
But I think they're both important, because my experience is singular in that I learned I was OCD about 2 months before lockdown happened, and that was like a tremendously big piece of my mental health tapestry that had been missing for me. But unfortunately, that meant that I was out of community, like immediately. As soon as I was like, oh my goodness, there's this whole group of people out there who get me in this way that I've never been understood, I lost them all, because I was doing some peer supervision stuff, or I'm not peer supervision, sorry, my partner's a psychotherapist, so that's a word that I hear a lot, but I was doing like just peer counseling sessions or whatever. Anyway, so I've always been afraid of illness. So being in a pandemic is like being in a Black Mirror episode for me. I'm just like beside myself. And so health has almost been like a thing that I can't think about. It's almost a standard that it's a bar that I'm not able to reach right now. Like I have panic attacks every day. I cry. I'm going to cry right now. Like I'm not doing great, but I'm not every musician. I'm just a musician who struggles with anxiety and is very, 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 very fearful of this pandemic and I'm living inside of it, for however long it lasts. It's like being afraid of a car crash. A car crash lasts, a second and then it's over. Pandemic is like so much time. So, but something that I'm touching on with my personal experience, and I don't know why I got so real so fast, is just like being outside of community is really hard. And it's really hard for everybody. That's like one generalization I feel comfortable making. And for musicians, it's like tremendously difficult to not be able to perform, because that is destabilizing for us financially, but it's where we make connections. It's where we grow our businesses. It's where we get to maintain our relationships with our fans and with our peers and meet new collaborators. And it's kind of like this industry that requires contact and now we're having to adapt. And I think people have been doing a really good job of it, but it's a lot to manage on top of trying to write and trying to perform on live streams and trying to like release music. People are having such a hard time releasing music. I've been looking for a manager. Nobody's like wanting to take anybody on right now because it's just a weird time.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do together, So it's interesting.
Yeah, those are really great insights. And you touch on your personal experiences, but I do feel like, and I can't say this for 100%, but I can say that there's some people out there who already have anxiety and depression and OCD and stuff like that, who now, and even if they don't feel like they currently struggle with that, they're probably experiencing it to some sort of degree. it's gotta be true, because like you said, unfortunately we can't resume our normal workflow, and people have built up their whole lives around this. So it's very, very scary. So let's move on to more of the industry professional side of things. So Catherine, from the perspective of a music industry professional, we all know that health and wellness hasn't exactly been prioritized over the years in the music industry, although it is starting to now, and things like this are great. And there's people like you, Catherine, who are bringing health and wellness into the light. But can you give some insight on what you find are new challenges that we're facing regarding our health and wellness as well? Like any kind of new challenges that you're facing that you want to touch on, if you're comfortable, or that you find the general sort of senses with the artists you work with. Do you mind touching on that a little bit? Oh, you got to unmute yourself. There we go.
Hear me? Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone's kind of touched on in the first place the community aspect. I think that's definitely a major player in all of this. Somebody like myself as well, who predominantly travels quite a bit throughout the year. I attend a lot of conferences. I'm on the road a lot with different artists on radio tours, media tours, things like that. Not having any of that going on is, you know, something very different than I've experienced in my entire career. I've never been home this much, which I'm sure a lot of people on this either panel or participants can probably relate to in some facet. I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that I'm finding a lot of people, like Carmen, you know, touched on too, just the outlet that, you know, live performing and being out there is for a creative person as well as an industry person. For me, like I've worked from home for over 10 years. So, you know, that's one aspect that I'm somewhat used to, although I try to say to everyone I speak to, especially right now, that as much as working from home might be something you're used to or something you're getting used to, also remember that we're working from home during a crisis. It's a lot different than working from home on a regular basis. For me personally, having things to look forward to, seeing my colleagues that I work with across the country, not having those opportunities to look forward to seeing people has definitely challenged me. But I think on the upside of it is a lot more conversations are happening because of it. You know, as you know, Sarah and I both are big champions of health and wellness in the music industry. And for those that are just both meeting us or learning, you know, it's something we speak about in great length and on a regular basis, and trying to find different ways to provide resources for people out there. Because, you know, what I do in my camp and how I champion, you know, mental health, physical health, rest, all of that from our artists isn't the same across the board. And so that's something that we've been trying to bring to different events and these different types of conversations on how to prioritize that, both now, but also, you know, when things are somewhat in a regular schedule of sorts, or whatever that's to look like in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And it will definitely keep touching on resources that are available for people as the session moves forward and as it makes sense as well. So let's kind of touch on a little bit about the people who might be not necessarily a music maker, but also a music professional who is like a freelancer or doesn't have the safety net in place like many other industries do. So Denise, I'll direct this question to you. So for many of us in the music industry, as you've been hearing, we are freelancers, maybe working other jobs outside of music to make ends meet, not having a stable safety net in place. Individual artists and professionals don't always have access to support system traditionally like other industries might have in place for their employees. There's not really a safety net. So can you provide insight on how these stressors might affect someone's health and wellness, just to kind of bridge those two things together so we're aware of it?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for that. And, you know, so one of the things is that, as we know, as of March 13th, all our lives changed from what we knew. And so certainly, Catherine, I can, you know, echo your sentiments, is that I've worked from home for 8 years, but I travel. And so everything came to a standstill. And I think that so many important messages that we all want to give out today, but one of them is we really have to be gentle and kind to ourselves, because what happened as of March 13th is that we experienced losses, and losses come in many different ways. So loss of income, loss of those connections, loss of the fun that we were having, all of that. And, for myself, being an extroverted hugger, that proved very challenging. I think my dog was getting tired of all the hugs, because I'm like, I need more hugs. But, it's like being gentle and being kind to ourselves, and realize that, number one, none of us have lived through a pandemic before. So the effect that it has on us is the effect it has on us. So how it has affected me hasn't necessarily been the way that it has affected Carmen or Catherine. And so that's the other thing that we have to remember, is that we really are doing the best that we can in a situation that none of us have been prepared for. So the losses that has been affected with us, those social networks, we have to find, we have to look back and say, well, where can we access that? We know that those losses do affect us mentally. And sometimes, we get stuck. And some of those changes, like we talk about the mental health continuum. And so the green is healthy, and we all want to be in the green, and the yellow is reacting, and the orange is injured, the red is ill, and the red is when we're real serious. But when they're reacting in the yellow, this is our normal reactions. And I think that's where we really have to take that step back and look at, we're really having normal reactions to an abnormal event. But what we really need to be aware of is, how long are those reactions going on? Or how are they causing other disruptions in our life? So is somebody isolating more? Even when we've been able to start going out, do you have friends and loved ones that aren't going out at all? Let's check in with them. That's one of the things. If we're having a Zoom call and you're starting to see somebody that's quieter in that Zoom call, or if you're doing more social functions on Zoom, that was one of the things that we saw. There was a lot more happy hours going on when we went into isolation, and a lot more game nights going on virtually. Really keeping that social aspect up is really important. But if we start noticing those, and there's always reason for change in behavior, and when we notice some of those changes, or we notice some indication of a mental decline, or a decline in somebody's mental wellness, let's check in with them. And that's one of the most important things, is that we really need to try to stay as connected as we possibly can, because people are experiencing a lot of losses, and the loss to me may have a different effect than a loss that you may be experiencing, Sarah. But realizing that we're all going through this, even though we're all in it together, we're experiencing it differently. But checking in with each other, we know that if somebody who's already struggling or living with a mental health problem, that we know that this loss certainly could have made those symptoms or made their experiences even worse. Let's check in with each other. That's one of the most important things that we can do, is to be that support. One of the things, we can't fix things, what people are going through, but we can be a good listener, and we could be the best support that we possibly can be. And being aware of those resources within the community, being aware of resources online. I said on a panel last week, and a great resource, and I wanted to share it with all of you, and it's geared towards men. And it's called headsupguys.ca, and it's an organization out of BC, and it's geared towards men living with depression. So I encourage anybody out there who is any males that are struggling with depression, or if you have somebody in your life that you may be, please share that resource. It's a very valuable resource, and it's because we know, for one, men aren't as talkative as women are about mental health well-being, and aren't ones to really jump in and have those discussions. So the more resources that we can give, that a man may feel safer going to that resource. So let's share the information that we have.
Wow, amazing. I just wrote that down because I wasn't aware of that. So that's super key. And those are also really great points for employers to take away from Denise's answer as well, to check up on people, on your employees, and make sure you're taking attention to what mental health struggles they might be enduring during this time, and how everyone is experiencing it differently. I want to pay a little tribute to our boss, Catherine, and I's coworker boss, Amanda Power of the Unison team, because she's always checking up on us, and she even bought us like happy lights to have at her desk. So just little things like that really do make a big difference, just to show she's paying attention, she cares. I still have that connection like I would in real life, although it's more virtual and more distant, but I still have that connection. So that's super, super, super important. Yep. So now that we've kind of talked about the barriers that we're all most likely facing to some degree, or even all of it, let's kind of get into what we can do, what we can do to help ourselves lead as healthy of a lifestyle as we possibly can during times of isolation. So I love the key number one, don't be so hard on yourself. That's what my counselor, therapist tells me all the time. Sarah, you're being too hard on yourself. You're trying to jam way too much stuff into your schedule. You got to take a breather. So those are really key things to keep in mind for, I think, everybody, to not just don't be too hard on yourself. So Carmen, I'm gonna circle back to you again. So tell us what you've been doing to look after your mental health in this really restrictive world we're currently in, where we can't resume our typical workflows as artists, as we've been talking about. Are there some things that you've been doing that you'd like to share, of what you've been doing to keep track of your health and wellness?
That's a good question. I've been lowering my expectations of myself. Like, we live in a real productivity driven society, and I think it's been important to just like meet myself where I am, which some days and some weeks is like not getting out of bed, and not beating myself up too much about that. It's in line with just like softening into like the present moment. Sometimes it's pretty hard. I started going on walks, like nature walks. I found that the Humber River was a place that for me was feeling really great in Toronto. So I was walking I was doing like 20,000 steps a day at one point, but it was a really nice routine. I would go to the studio in the morning, do a bit of work, go for a long walk, go home. Like, that created a container. So like routine became helpful. Eventually, I think a lot of people have experienced like changing out of your pajamas can be a transformative act of self-care. Just like putting pants on has been really good. And then just like, I don't know, like, it's the pandemic. Everybody's regressed. I'm like 15-year-old Carmen right now. I walk around, I roll my eyes, I stomp my feet. I have temper tantrums about everything. And I'm learning that I need to call friends more and not rely on my partner so much. Like, folks who live with a roommate or live with a family member or a partner, we're now forcing each other to be everything to each other, like our caregiver, our punching bag, our lover, our partner, our friend, our confidant. Like, it's like too much pressure to put on yourself and on somebody else. So there's like relational pressure as well. Spreading the conversations out among a few friends has been really helpful for me to not.
Yeah. I think that's something I could personally take something away from that, because like I live with my partner as well, and it does become like a give and take sort of thing where people are really relying on each other a lot. And just reach out to people, make sure you're chatting with your family and chatting with your friends. That's super key. Catherine, speaking of routine, what are kind of ways you're finding keeping a consistent schedule or routine maybe difficult these days, or how are you maintaining your routine personally?
It's a good question also. It's definitely changed for me over the course of the many months, relating to Carmen's comment of, just being kind to myself and showing up to where I am each day as well. And it's just like super key in order to, and that's something I try to practice in my everyday life, but especially now, of just being really acknowledging when I need to pause, when I need to go for a walk, clear my head if I'm not in a space where I feel like I'm going to be productive or I'm going to be able to be present in the work I'm doing, especially because in my roles, a lot of people, need my attention. And I also have a family at home that requires a whole other type of attention. So for me, I've actually been fortunate in some capacities to have worked through this entire pandemic. So, I relate from an aspect where some of it hasn't changed outside of the traveling. And so I get up, I have my morning routine, but even more so, I've incorporated a lot more pauses in the day. I've made sure that I'm doing more meditations, walking more, just getting outside, like entirely separating myself from technology. And also minimizing how much news I'm taking in, how much social media I'm taking in, and just really being open and honest with myself where I'm at every day, and also being able to have those open dialogues with my clients and colleagues so that we all can continue to have that open dialogue, which we're fortunate that we have at Unison. You know, I think it's a safe place that we've created in that work culture, and trying to continue to do that within you know, the spaces that I work in as well. But yeah, I can't say that every day looks the same, but definitely getting up, showering, getting changed, you know, just, yeah, being mindful of where I'm at. And, you know, one week is awesome and another week is challenging. And it's, you know, the coronavirus roller coaster is a real thing. And just, yeah, I just, at the end of the day, like we've all been saying, it's just being kind to myself and acknowledging what I know my limits are and my boundaries, and you know, showing up for myself in those areas.
Yeah, I think something I've really learned from that, basing on what you're saying too, something I've personally really learned is how easy it is to fall off a routine, being not having the same kind of structure of getting up, going to work, or getting up and doing band practice, or the same way we did before. But I've started to find, especially since I suffer with severe depression and PTSD, I started to notice that I'm spending a little too much time in bed, or I haven't been outside today at all. Like, what? And it's like, so it's like, it's important. And what I do is I actually just like write down quickly, you know, priorities of the day, and then what's not important, what is important, what's a priority and not a priority, and just to make it somewhat breathable for myself. So I'm making sure I'm taking a break during this time. So for people who aren't working, I know it's hard to keep a routine, but it can be anything. It can honestly be absolutely anything. You can write it down, you can keep it in your brain. This is what I'm going to do today. So yeah, just a little tidbit from me, actually. So Diana, what's been your go-to advice for keeping healthy during the pandemic? And what have you been doing to keep your health aligned?
Well, you know, Sarah, you just said something that for people who aren't working, it's hard to keep a routine. But remember something, a routine isn't about work. It's just about your life and just keeping your life in general, right? Or work is just part of our lives. For some of us, you know, let's just say for some reason they don't work. That doesn't mean they don't have a life in general, right? The main thing that I've been telling people when it comes to routines is just keeping your normal life day to day. So like Catherine just said, if your normal thing is, you know, you wake up in the morning, you shower, even like Carmen says, you change your PJs, that's basically what I did. The only thing that changed in my routine, and I think Denise said it, we just had to make some changes, was I used to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning, you know, get up, shower, dress, wash my hair, dry it, get changed, get to the office, and they'd be there for 8. Well, with the pandemic, I didn't have to travel anywhere, so that was a whole hour I could save. So instead of getting up at 5, I was like, oh my God, I could get up at 6, even 6:30 sometimes, because as I was walking through the clinic, I didn't have to check what my receptionist was doing. I didn't have to check what my colleagues were doing. All I have to do is go from my bedroom to the bathroom, from the bathroom to my computer. All of that is about maybe a 5-second walk, right? And so it changed, but it still remained the same in where I still did personal care. I still showered, I still got out of bed, I still changed my clothes. I still did all those things. But as somebody just said, but there were some days on the weekends, if I was like, you know what, I don't have to get up today, I just want to lie in bed a little bit, then that's what I'm going to do. Because one of the things that I know Denise will probably know about this is when you work with the Indigenous community, there's one thing that I remember one day going to a conference and they said, never tell people what they need. Ask them what they need. Because and I remember, I think Denise, you said this, what may work for me doesn't work for you. So I can give you suggestions, and that's awesome. And that's what we do for a living, right? We give people suggestions in my profession. But my thing I always do is I ask everybody, what is it you need? In the same way I ask myself. Just because my routine may be the same Monday to Friday doesn't mean next week on Wednesday, that might do it for me, because something could have happened during that week that's going to throw me off. So when I wake up that Thursday, I may not be doing so well. I have to ask myself, okay, Dana, what is it you need today to help you to get through this day? Yes, you have your normal things, and yes, but all of that right now may not work if, let's say, for example, I got up and my dog is dead, right? As an example, right? What I do during that week may not help me at all, because that's a new experience. And now I have to figure out what I need for me to help me emotionally. So this is why with all my patients, I always ask them, what is it you need to get you to where you need to go, to get you up, to get you motivated, to get you there. So routines are highly important, but you have to be, and this is where it comes in with someone, I think Denise said it, you have to have compassion, you have to have self-love, you have to be able to be moldable to that, because if you stick so rigid, then you won't survive the pandemic. Because you're right, the pandemic brought a lot of losses to us. Simply what everybody experienced across the board was just loss of freedom, right? The things we were able to do, go out when we want, go to Walmart, buy what we need, come home, kind of changed, right? I don't know about everybody here, but last time I checked, we all need to wear a mask to wherever we need to go, right? I still forget and have to go back in the house, go get it, go back. And every time, somebody recently put a joke in saying, when y'all take off your mask after coming out, do you do it like if though you just walked out, finished watching a Grey's Anatomy show and you're a surgeon and you rip it off your face as if someone just died? Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I rip it off my face. I'm like, damn it, I hate this thing. And then I keep walking home, right? So that's the thing you just got to keep in mind. Things are going to change, and we just have to have compassion. So you want to keep routine, but you got to have compassion, and you got to be moldable to the changes. Because what happens if next week they announce, by the grace of whatever, the pandemic is completely gone and we can all go back to normal life? I'm not sure how some people will handle that, because some people now have settled in from, I want to work from home. I like being at home. I like doing this. And now you're told everybody has to go back to work. I've had some patients who've been told they have to go back to the office, and they're not settling well with that, because they liked the person they are right now versus the one they were before. And now that's totally changed for some people. So again, be moldable. Keep a routine, but be moldable. But ask yourself every morning, what is it you need versus telling yourself? Because that's where you lack the human compassion for yourself. And if I don't have compassion for me, no one else really is going to, because I only live this life, me, myself. So I agree with the way everybody's talking about the routine and the compassion. But moldability is what's going to survive us all here.
Amazing.
Sarah, can I jump in one quick
Of course.
statistics? Diana, love everything you have to
Denise, you froze.
say.
Denise
And
froze.
when we're supporting each other and having those conversations with our friends. Oh, there I am. I'm back. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that we can ask somebody, I know I'm getting my thing rerouted tomorrow. One of the things that we can ask somebody is, what does help look like for you today? Because what help looked like yesterday isn't necessarily the help that I need today, right? So that's what we can ask the person that we're having that conversation with, like what has helped in the past and what does help look like for you today? Because yesterday help may have been, I need to just sit alone quietly in my backyard with my dog and enjoy the peace and quiet. And maybe today help looks like I need to talk to my BFF because I'm having.
Because my dog died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be a lot worse than just talking to my BFF.
Yeah,
My dog died.
but you're right.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to change. The need is going to be totally different.
Yeah. And that's we have to, because what has helped, and and Carmen, I'm sure that that you can even elaborate on this. Some things that help one day isn't necessarily what you need the next day, and so that's why we ask that individual, like, what does help look like for you today?
What do you need
for you today? Yeah.
Can I actually add one thing as well to that?
Mm-hmm.
Something that's been really important and I've been like constantly having to remember this, is that it's also very pointless to compare where I'm at to other people. Like, I looked around, and as early as late April, I had friends of mine that were like having socially distanced hangs where sometimes people weren't wearing masks, and as soon as then that thing at Bellwoods happened, remember that? It was like as soon as the weather got nice and people could go outside, everyone was like socializing, and I couldn't do it. And I just have really struggled with feeling like it's not okay for me to take longer. It's not okay for me to be comfortable later, and it's been a journey to accept that I'm slower, and some people are quicker, and that's just a part of this whole process, that if you are constantly trying to keep up with other people, you're going to feel like, what's that quote? I'm sure that Denise and Diana will know, that it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society, I think is
I'm not sure
I don't
of that
think I've heard that
I've
one.
never heard it
That's
either.
cool.
therapist
Never heard it.
all the time, because I'm always trying to keep up with people by going on tour when I'm too anxious, or pushing through really tough stuff to get my album done in time. And yeah, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. So
I like that.
Yeah, we just have to give ourselves permission that, I'm having a rough day or I'm having a rough spell. It's okay. We have to be so gentle to our, especially with this. So think about where everybody was before the pandemic hit and the struggles that people were experiencing with their mental well-being before the pandemic hit. And then the pandemic hits, right? So that's why we just have to really be gentle and give ourselves permission that we are doing the best that we can every single day. Truly.
Yes. And Denise, do you mind? Oh, Catherine.
Oh, no, Catherine wanted to.
Catherine, absolutely. Yes.
Into, because like I can relate to that feeling too, and like from the beginning was watching so many people pump out all these releases and doing all this stuff, and I was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Like, how does anyone even have the capacity to even like do that right now? Let alone like, I actually had a moment where like I think it was. Obviously, it must have been March. I think it was maybe a couple of weeks after like Junos went down and simultaneously all these different things happened. But I finally jumped on to a music managers forum web Zoom meeting and like had some open dialogue with other people that were at varying degrees of their experience, and everybody just like really having a real conversation about like where they were at. And I was like, that was the most like important thing for me at that point, because I was really getting caught up in how other people were coping. I was starting to judge how other people were operating, and I was like, I'm just not there, and that's okay. And being able to have that open conversation with other people, to be like, oh, so-and-so that I maybe look up to doesn't have any idea how they're going to handle this. They have no idea how they're going to support their artists through this. And I was like, oh my God, right, we're humans. We're all, relating to something that we've never been through before. And that was like really a turning point for me, to just be like, just pause for a minute, talk to your artists, see where everybody's at. One of the main questions I had asked in that particular webinar was also how other artist managers were prioritizing their artists' mental health, especially because I saw so many people pumping out live streams, I should say, and releases and things. And I was like, again, because it's something that I really champion, like bringing that to the top of the priority list of like, who's actually thinking, have you had those conversations with your artists, as opposed to, oh, we're scrambling, we all need to make money, we all need to just, pivot is my word of the year actually right now. But, just figure it out. And like, these are just ongoing conversations that I've had now with my teams as a result, to just be like, you know what, like I have one artist who maybe doesn't have the capacity to do any live streams this year. That's okay. We'll figure it out. Maybe there's other artists who, that's a different way to have that outlet. They can still connect with fans. They're okay with that. But it changes from time to time. We're constantly checking in with each other. And, maybe there's like a series that's been planned and a day they can't do, it's like at the end of the day, like the biggest priority is your mental health. And if today you can't do it, we're not saving lives here. Like, this, if you need to take that day, then that means more than anything else.
Yep, 100%. Totally align with everything you're saying. And I hope everyone's taking good nuggets, like I was saying, from this too, and hopefully applying it to their day-to-day, and remember to be gentle, and remember it's okay to take a break as well, and just sit back and just figure it out for yourself and come to where you are, like we're saying. So incredible points. Denise, I would like you to, if you don't mind, explaining what resources people could access through the Mental Health Commission of Canada.
Sure, absolutely. So if you go to actually Mental Health First Aid, so that is the program I'm the training and delivery specialist of with the commission. If you go to our website, mhfa.ca, we actually have some COVID resources. And so it comes right up on the main screen right away. Also, if you go to the top where there's a few tabs, one will say resources. If you click on that, there will say blogs. So I've written a few blogs starting back in April, some on self-care, some on doing a self-check-in. So where am I today? So I would definitely encourage you to go to our website. There's specific COVID resources. If you go to the commission is a lot of general stuff, but there's resources on there as well too, but the MHFA site is where you're going to find a lot of them. There's also resources you can click on that are throughout the country as well too. One of the things I would certainly throw out to individuals is become familiar with your mental health resources within your own community. So like, for example, I live in St. Catharines. We have the Niagara Distress Center. There's Distress Center Toronto and Durham. and the distress center is just, you need somebody to talk to. You may not have somebody that you feel comfortable talking to about whatever stressors that you're going through. It's toll-free number, call them. They are trained volunteers. They will listen to whether it's relationship, financial, mental health, whatever. So, call your local mental health organizations, go online, find out what resources are there, what kind of wonderful peer support organizations throughout Canada. But go onto the websites of your local mental health agencies and see what resources are there. But I strongly encourage, like the Kids Help Phone for our young people is a great, and a lot of the places are doing text to chat. You don't even have to call anybody. Just you can text and there's a trained volunteer to have that conversation with you. Obviously, we're still offering the Caring for Others course, which was a course put together in response to the pandemic. It's a 2-hour online. It's free. We're offering it through October. It was geared towards essential workers, but we opened it up through everybody in Canada. We've trained over 4,000 Canadians have taken this course, and it's really just about like what indicators that somebody may be struggling with their mental well-being and how to have a conversation and be a support. So we're offering that through the middle of October, because then once November rolls around, we're offering our basic course virtually. So that will be offered, and our course is just about learning how to recognize that somebody may be experiencing a decline in their mental well-being, may be experiencing a crisis, whether it be suicidal thoughts, a panic attack, how to support that person. And that's what mental health first aid really is about. So those courses will be offered the middle of November, I would say, once we train, upskill all of our current facilitators in that course. But get educated. Let's be able to have these conversations, not just in a webinar, but sitting at your dining room table. We need to talk about mental health and mental well-being. So go to the website, a lot of great resources. And obviously, if there's anything that comes up after the webinar, Sarah, you have my email. You folks can reach out to me at any given time.
Perfect. That's super, super good to know. Thank you so much, Denise. And Diana, do you mind explaining what Over the Bridge is and kind of what, I know there's some peer support meetings going on through Over the Bridge as well. So that could be something that people want to access if they would like to. Do you mind just giving everyone an idea of what Over the Bridge is?
So Over the Bridge was created by Ace Piva, and it exists in order to be able to connect musicians with resources and support, right? So remember, where peer support is, it's just that. It's basically being able to talk to somebody else about what's going on. And it's not that you're looking for professional advice. And when I mean professional advice would be like Denise or myself, right? Where you're looking is to be relatable to another individual. And like Denise says, a lot of these peer support groups started up, and Over the Bridge started one up actually on Facebook so that people can just talk. Because I've actually had, I never forgot, I had one patient who asked to see me. They came in and they said, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't actually need your advice. I just need you to hear me, because I need to say this out loud so I can see what it sounds like. And I always describe it to people as, have you ever had an outfit in mind, or you saw something on the website, or let's say back then when catalogs used to exist, and you would say, oh, that looks great. I think I'm gonna go buy that outfit. And so you try it out in your mind and it looks great. And then you go to the store and you try it on, you're like, oh, hell no. This does not work for me. Well, that's how emotions work. Until you actually say it out loud, everything that sounds in your brain can either sound 100% awesome or 100% horrible. But until you say it out loud to someone else, you're like, wow, that might work. Oh, no, hell no, that's actually not a good idea. And that's what peer supports at times are for, when you can't access a professional, is to be able to say, like that patient came and said, look, I don't need your advice. I just need to say this out loud. And when they said it out loud, I remember sitting there, not really having to say anything, because they started figuring it out and saying, yeah, now when I say this, I don't think this is a good idea. I kind of see where I went wrong. Wow, thanks, Diana. This is the greatest hour of my life. And they left. Never saw them again, but I'm assuming they took their own advice and actually applied it. And so peer support exists, especially with Over the Bridge, is for that, to be able to get the musicians to come on board and say, hey, for example, Catherine, does it suck that you're at home and you can't be on tour? Great, because that's how I feel too. So I'm not the only one in the world, because what people don't realize is peer support is really, to the fundamental, is to help you with that anxiety that's raging, because people don't really fully understand what anxiety is. Anxiety basically is a fear-based disorder. It's something that you're fearful of that's going to happen that you cannot control. And I always describe it as the dog in the corner. You ever seen a dog that gets cornered? What does it do? When it feels like it's no way out, it'll rage, right? But if the dog knows it can go around you because it has options, it's like, oh, the hell with this, Diana's not a threat. I'm just going to walk around her and mosey on. And that's what the peer supports were created. So when you're at home thinking, my life is going to hell, no one understands me, my career is gone, I'm trapped, there's no way out. And then you get on this peer support and you hear, oh, Denise feels the same. But Denise says, but here's what I did. I did a routine, and holy shit, that might work for me. And then you go home and you actually tried it. That's what the peer supports are for. Actually hear other people with the same problem. And if you normally hear those same problems are all based on that anxious feeling of, I am trapped and there's no way out. And when you hear that, you feel now supported because she did it. Again, doesn't mean it'll work for me, but what's the harm in trying, right? She's not saying I sat at home and then, drugs and it worked out. She's saying I sat at home and created a routine. There's no actual maladaptive behavior in creating a routine unless the routine itself that you're creating, like, sitting at home, like somebody had mentioned about over drinking or day drinking, could, that might be a problem. But if the routine is a healthy one, you just got support and an idea, and you can go back in that peer support and say, Denise, when you said X, Y, and Z, well, you know what? I did the same, and some things worked out and some things didn't, but at least for those things that worked out, I had options now. And for the things that didn't, now I know I still have options. And that's all it is finding options to the situation that you feel trapped in. Because once you have options, trust me when I tell you, you won't feel trapped anymore. You'll feel like there are doors. I heard somebody once say, opportunity isn't found, it's created. So make the door. Make the door when you can't find that door. Because if you don't make that door and that door never comes for you, then you will be trapped. But if you can create that door, you will find a way out, however it is.
Wow,
so it's great.
Incredible. And I love that opportunity. You have to create the opportunity because there's so many things we can't control right now. And that is something we can control though, at least, right? And that gives me comfort personally, just knowing that I have control over creating my opportunities and creating options for myself, getting the peer support, using self-help tools if you prefer that, which is another thing I want to quickly mention before we move on to any questions.
I just want to say something you just said. You said what we have control over. And I tell this to all my patients, and Denise is probably going to fully understand this. You have control over nothing. The only thing you have control over is you and the decisions you make and how you respond and react to that problem. So I cannot control the pandemic, but I sure as hell can control how I'm going to respond to this pandemic. And if I want to react or if I want to respond, that's the only thing I have control over. And in that will determine my outcome. This is why I tell people, I'm not so much concerned about your emotion, I'm concerned about your behavior that is coming from this emotion. And that's what I've been telling everybody in the pandemic. All you have is you. So figure the emotion, control the emotion, and then you'll know if you're responding or reacting to what's happening to you.
Amazing. Yes. And there's so many things I would love to touch on. It's just, oh my God, it's already 2:53, guys. Like, what? And it's like, where does the time go? Let's just continue to have these conversations. Like I said, you guys can find all of us on the Folk Music Ontario website. You can click learn more about Denise, learn more about Catherine, Carmen, and Diana as well. And if you guys want to reach out to me and ask more questions, that's totally fine. So there's so many other things too we could always discuss, like the fact substance use got brought up in the conversation and how that was already rampant in the music industry, and how that might be really affecting people's struggles right now as well. So, there's always, let's just try to move proactively in a healthy, balanced direction,
Right.
not be too hard on ourselves. I sound like a broken record when I say that, but I have to tell myself that all the time. And that's really the main thing that helps me. So if anyone wants to just kind of expand on any last resources that you have, or any other kind of experiences you've created in this sort of situation, what we can be doing to move in a healthy direction. Personally, I'll just give like a quick little thing I've been doing recently, and it sounds cheesy, so get ready, but I write down 5 things I'm grateful for every morning. And that's honestly been a game changer for me. It might not work for you guys, but if you want to give it a shot, do it. And sometimes it's really hard to find things to write down. Sometimes it takes me a whole half hour to write something that's different from yesterday, right? But that's been something for me I've been doing, and it's been a game changer just to kind of give myself a little bit more of a different perspective too. So whenever Joel wants to hop on, and maybe if there's any questions the panelists have, if they want to type them into the chat, we're more than happy to just keep the conversation going for the next 10 minutes. And yeah, so let's just let's just chat, guys, and like we can maybe touch on a little bit about the substance use topic as people might be wanting to type out their questions. So Diana, and anybody really, this might be a question for all of you. What are some healthy habits we could replace, or not even replace, but some healthy habits to integrate into our routine that has been working for you guys, that might help somebody who's struggling with some substance issues, or struggling with the fact that we're at home all the time and it's more accessible, and things on that nature. So if you guys want to, does anybody want to take a stab at that right now? Or
well, I own an inpatient facility, so if you're struggling with substance abuse, you need counseling, number one, right? Because the main issue, and I don't know if anybody here's ever read the book from Gabor Mate, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. One of the things that he says, and I never forgot it when I read it years ago in pharmacology, he said, to the core of substance abuse, it's not the substance issue that you should be worried about. It is the emotion that is triggering that substance abuse. Because for every human being that I have ever treated with substance abuse, not one of them has walked in and said, my life is awesome, and I'm choosing to ruin it with drugs just because I think it's the hardest thing in the world. No, they're not. It's because they'll tell me, even for the one-off kid who went to university, went wild out there, did drugs, and then came home cleaned up, after he graduated and never touched it again. Okay, that was an experimental phase for them, right? But for everybody else, every single one of them has said, no, like I either had some form of abuse, depression, anxiety, PTSD, some trauma, something that led me into this, and I think Gabor even said it in the book. It's like that warm fuzzy blanket, like now that it's getting cold, that we put on at nights, which it doesn't judge us. It makes us feel happy. It makes us feel warm. It makes us feel comfort. It makes us feel this moment as I'm falling asleep where all the darkness goes away, where I find my serenity. It's where it brings me to peace. That is for many people what the drugs are. It's bringing them, whether it be alcohol or any form of substance abuse, it's bringing them that peace that they can't find elsewhere, because it's numbing the pain from wherever that emotional spot is coming from. And so again, that's what I tell people. It isn't the emotion so much as the behavior. Because somebody can tell me I am depressed, but they'll still get up, they'll still go to work, they'll still shower, they'll still do everything, but internally they're struggling. And we can work with that, no doubt. But then it reaches the second level for the ones that don't get up, the ones that don't get out of bed, the ones that can contemplate suicide all day, the ones that no longer go to work. Again, that behavior is then what keeps on triggering and then pushing this emotion even more, because it's like the chicken and the egg. It just keeps going around and around and around. So if you have an issue with any sort of substance abuse, even if you're addicted to, let's say, video games all day long, that's still a problem, because you're using that to mask what's happening. You need to reach out for help. You need to go to counseling, and you need to see what type of services you need, because there is nothing that I'm going to do for you to swap one with the other. Because I can say, okay, I will take the drugs away and we'll give you reading. But what happens if you become addicted to reading to the point that you never leave the house because that's all you do all day? Again, anything that cause an effect in your life, cause a heart's disturbance like that, it could be reading, it could be drugs, it's still not beneficial for you, right? So, but with alcohol or drugs, we don't swap one for the other. We don't. It is about finding out what the emotion is that's triggering the behavior, and then trying to find a way on how to control that. And it's always going to come from an emotional emptiness or hole or vacancy in their life that continues to trigger this and mask it with the drugs and alcohol.
Yes. Wow, that's an incredible answer. I learned a lot from that personally too. So thanks, Diana. And I also want to quickly note too, Unison just launched a new program called LifeWorks. And it's a really, really great tool you can access for free if you're a Unison member. And basically you can go on our website and you can use it on your desktop, but you can also download the app, the LifeWorks app. And there's tons of like guided self-assessment tools on there, and different programs you can go through. Like there's ones for substance, there's ones for grief, loss, like partner issues, like divorce and things like that. There's so many variety of self-help resources through the app that you can take yourself through if you're feeling a little overwhelmed with the peer support, or maybe you're a bit more introverted and you don't know if that's for you or not. There's other options too. So make sure you're taking a look at everything we've talked about. If you guys forget any of the resources we've talked about, I'm happy to you guys can email me. You can find my contact on the Unison website and ask away. But I have Joel in the questions here. He says he has a question he can ask Ness. Joel, do you want to hop on?
I do indeed. First off, thanks everyone for that panel. It was really informative. I found myself writing down a lot of things. In my former career, I was involved in a research organization, and a lot of the research put out by the part of the building involved with workplace health and wellness. Like they put out a lot of research on it, but the information was often gleaned from larger organizations, just because that's where you'd get the data from. So you'd have a lot of lessons learned, and you'd read reports about, okay, this makes a great workplace, and we really understand that. What kind of things, or maybe you could speak to, I'm looking at you, Denise, as well as you, Sarah, and Catherine from Unison. Is there any research out there specifically on either small organizations or performing arts organizations? And if not, what can people who are working, like Carmen, who is a small business owner, right? Like, what can artists like her do when, trying to find resources specifically around the workplace and not necessarily for insert artist here?
Well, the commission did release in 2013 the psychologically safe and health workplace standard. But obviously it goes various number of workplaces. We do have a workplace mental health program as well with the mental health first aid program. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar of research that's been done specifically, but on the commission's website, we do have one of our programs is the Knowledge Exchange Center, and they do a lot of different research and studies. I would encourage going on to the commission's website, which is just mentalhealthcommission.ca, and go to KEC. They go off into their own website as well too, where you can find some different resources that's been on there. But unfortunately, I wish that I could give you a wealth of resources out there. But, we know that, one of the things is that, and Diana touched on this so well about the listening piece. And regardless if you have an organization of 10,000 employees or you are a sole proprietor, we all need somebody to listen to us. And that's where those other resources come in at, whether it is those, crisis lines, distress centers, peer support organizations, peer support groups, is that we all need somebody to listen to us regardless. And you could have, an employee, that has 10 employees and they have the best mentally healthy workplace because they keep the conversation going. And this is where I hope is that after this webinar that we keep the conversation going, because we need to be those safe spaces for everybody. We need to be the ones that when we see somebody struggling, we see a change in behavior, that we create that safe space for them and allow them to have that conversation. I will say, and this has nothing to do with the workplace, but I just want to throw it out there, a fantastic video to watch on empathy. Brene Brown, Diana, I know you say Brene Brown.
Every conference I do, I present it in there.
But she has this great 4-minute clip on empathy. And if you just go to YouTube and type in Brene Brown empathy, it is so many teaching points on there about how we can be that empathetic listener and support to each other. And I encourage everybody to view that. There's so many teaching points, and I show that video every presentation that I do. But there's so many great teaching points, and we can all learn to be better listeners and supports.
Wow. Yeah. And based on, and Catherine and I's experience in the music industry in terms of research that's available, there's so much work that needs to be done, and people are working on it. Trust me, people are working on conducting the research. In terms of resources, I think taking good example from organizations and companies who are championing the mental health field, currently, like Royal Mountain Records, they have a mental health fund for their musicians in place. They have an allocated fund for each artist if they need, it can be mental health related, it can be like dental work, or whatever they need that's related to their health. They have access to a fund through their labels. So I think just taking good note from what other people in the music industry are doing, and taking inspiration from that as well. So So yeah. Is there any other questions in the chat? I know, Carmen, you put in your Instagram handle, so everybody go follow Carmen, because I know I do, and I see lots of good stuff on there. And also your TikTok is awesome. So, you know, there's all these little things we could do. You know, if we want to be careful of how much we're on social media, but as us artists can also be using that as a tool.
One thing about TikTok, actually,
Yeah.
that's the place where I have found community during COVID, actually. There are incredible creators on TikTok talking about ADHD, like neurodiversity, all sorts of stuff that I had, you know, I live with a very grounded person and have felt very like isolated from them. But TikTok like mental health TikTok is lit right now. It's amazing.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's so cool. Well, thank you all so much for joining and being a part of this conversation. And I hope we can all keep, like you said, Denise, like we're all saying, keep the conversation going after this, and everyone to check out the resources we mentioned after this as well. Make sure you get on your computers, check it out. It doesn't hurt to look, right? And just take a little bit of time for yourself and see what is there for you. Make sure, again, on the Unison website, we're posting blogs that Catherine also helps work on that has tons of really, really helpful topics of things like coping. And I mean, Catherine, you could always touch on what kind of topics are there, but there's tons of them. And we also post like resource lists too. So, and they're always growing and adapting to whatever situation's going on currently. As you know, it's always changing. So just keep an eye on all these websites and Unison and the Mental Health Commission and Mental Health First Aid and the Over the Bridge site. Keep an eye on what Carmen's doing, keep an eye on what Catherine and I are doing, and we can all get through this together, guys. So I'm really, really happy to have this conversation, and hopefully keep doing this and do this again, and maybe dive into a bit more specific conversations that you guys want to hear. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.